Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my walkthrough for Chrono Trigger for Nintendo DS. This video covers the 6th chapter of the game titled Beyond the Ruins, and it takes place just after we escaped from prison in 1000 AD, and we ended up escaping through a portal to a mysterious time period. Now, as soon as you arrive, you'll then see a door just to the north that has a mysterious symbol engraved on it, and we can't access it for now. However, you should keep this in mind because all of these doors and chests with this symbol will end up becoming important later. So leave Banger Dome and continue on to the south to Trann Dome, where you'll find your first signs of civilization. There is a dude here whom you can sell stuff to back and forth, and he doesn't recognize the type of currency we're using, but he is still willing to trade us for it, which is kind of weird. I don't understand why somebody would do that. Also, I don't understand how he can possibly know the correct prices if he doesn't recognize our currency. I wonder how the exchange rate works for something like that. Anyways, there are several things you can buy here. There is an upgraded gun for Luca, which is actually pretty nice. However, at the same time, we're going to get an upgrade for here fairly soon out in the wild that's even stronger, and which just pretty much only helps with a boss fight that's upcoming, although we don't even really use her physical damage for that, because once again, Luca is our spellcaster. Her damage is not scaled with her weapon, so it doesn't really matter that much. So upgrade it if you want to. I don't really think it matters too much. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and buy just an iron suit. Now, if you have some money, it might be good to get like 1 or 2 iron helms and iron suits. I wouldn't get more than that because we are going to get some upgrades for some of this stuff. As always, you're going to find some things just out in the wild in general, so you don't necessarily have to fill out every single slot. So next what I did is I went ahead and sold everything I had of all my older equipment. This does give me a little bit more money, so I can technically afford everything, just barely now, although that is like stretching it a little bit, so I don't really want to do that. One thing I kind of regret though is I kind of regret that I did sell everything. I kind of wish that I had kept a hide helm or a padded vest as well, because that would allow me to swap items back and forth between Luca and Marl, because the thing is, you can't unequip items you already have unless you have something else to replace it with. So if I kept a bad item on purpose, it would allow me to be very distinctive, like a hide. Ooh, I already know it's a bad item. So it would allow me to know which items are terrible so that I can swap it out. That'll make sense later. You can speak with everybody here. You'll kind of find out that nobody knows what you're talking about. They don't recognize the name Truce Village or anything, and they have no idea what time frame this is. They don't know what you're talking about. And one of the guys over here does say that there is an Enertron nearby that you can use to heal. However, it does not do anything for your hunger. There is another one of those mysterious doors that we cannot open for now, but just keep that in mind because we will come back here eventually to do that. There is a character here inside this room who says that nobody knows how to open those mysterious doors, and so you should just give up and shouldn't try anything. Now, that is true for now, but eventually we will be able to do so. Continue on north to enter Site 16, and here we have a new enemy called a rat. You can't actually fight these guys. What they do is they just steal your potions/tonics if they touch you. What you want to do is just stand still when you're next to them, because enemies will actually patrol right through you. Next, you want to continue on to the right and then open the chest to get the Berserker Ring. Then continue on back this way and just, again, let the rats run through you on purpose. Once they're far enough away, you can make a run for it. So up ahead, we have an unavoidable fight. We have 2 new enemies here. There is a Floral Horror, otherwise called a Meat Eater, and that is fairly resistant to physical attacks, but it's very weak to magic. So what you want to do is ideally use Flamethrower or Flame Toss on the Floral Horror, and then meanwhile the Octopods are vulnerable to physical attacks and super resistant to magic. So what you want to do is try not to use Flamethrower on them instead, but just use Chrono and Marl's attacks on them to take them out instead. Do you ever wish your healers were just completely unable to heal? Do you ever wish that they could pretend for a moment that they were like any other class than what they were already good at? Do you ever wish you could set them loose like a rabid animal on unsuspecting foes? Well, have I got the accessory for you, the Berserker Ring, found in a chest just south of you moments ago. Slap this on either one of your caster companions to make them not quite casters, not quite brawlers, but something in between that is uncontrollable and make you use the phrase, mistakes were made. Yeah, I don't know, the Berserker Ring just feels like a bad idea to me, because you just can't control who you're attacking. Even though it increases your damage, you just have random targets. So like, I feel like it's way better to just force down like one target at a time. So the ability to control your character is just so much better. And honestly, like, why would you want to make your casters who do terrible damage do slightly more damage? It just isn't, I don't know. Unless there's a fight specifically that the enemies are only vulnerable to physical, but at that point you can swap out your characters, so I don't know. Over in the top left, there is a way to sneak through there without causing any problems. I accidentally got moved at the last second for that rat, which is sad. There's a silver sword right here, but I already got one earlier in the game, so I'm not worried about that. Swing wide for that lower part to get through there without any combat. And then here there is some rats. Again, if you just hold still while they're running over you, they shouldn't steal anything. And then over to the left, you'll find a silver bow/load bow, which is an upgrade for Marl. So I am trying to avoid as many fights as possible, and here to the south, you can avoid these fights by simply just staying against the outer wall. So here you just stay along this outer wall, and then in the next area you stay at this outer wall too. There's another new enemy here that I haven't even shown yet. These are called craters, and they can be defeated pretty easily using Fire Whirl. So up ahead we have another rat. Once again, I'm going to stand in his patrol path on purpose and run over to it and then stop moving to make it so that I don't end up getting anything stolen, and then I'll just make a run for it after that. So as long as you're not moving while the enemies are running past you, then you're fine. Now, up ahead, I'm going to be avoiding all the combat. I can. However, I'm going to show a recording real quick of me killing some guys. The reason for this is because I need a little bit more TP for Marl. So if you have not been leveling with her previously, and you don't care about getting the secret with me, or you've already leveled up too high, so you're not going to have access to that anyway, then one of the things I'd recommend you do if you just got Marl back and she doesn't have Aura yet, is you want to get enough TP for her so that she can learn it. So tech points will end up unlocking that for her real quick. It should take a couple fights, shouldn't be too big deal, but you want to get Aura before the next box if you can. You don't have to, it just is a nice thing, so I'm going to do that real quick in this recording just to show it. However, I'm not going to actually do these fights for real, so I'll rewind here in a little bit and show you the sneaky method. So here I showed two new fights. We have Shadows, which are very vulnerable to magic, but they're very resistant to physical, so just use a Fire Whirl would be the best bet, otherwise Flamethrower. And this fight is against a Mutant. What you want to do is definitely use Flamethrower with Luca, and then you can have everybody else do physical attacks. And this is actually a great fight example of when you might want to use the Berserker Ring, and the character I'd recommend you put that on for sure would be Marl. And the reason for that is, again, because you can have her heal outside of combat is one of the reasons for that. So if she's just punching everything in combat anyways, and you're only healing out of combat regardless, then you don't need, she's only auto-attacking anyways. The only disadvantage of the Berserker Ring is you can't select your target. But a lot of fights, even like this, you only have one target anyway, so it's not the end of the world, I don't know. So whatever you want to do, you can mess with it if you want to. That item is only useful for a little while, though. So here I'm just showing how Marl can heal outside of combat, just like I was doing with Slurp with Frog back in Minoria Cathedral, so it's just a really nice thing. Honestly, Marl is a little bit more of a dedicated healer. She has more variety of healing spells. Anyways, now I'm going to show the sneaky method. Just stay south right here to avoid these shadows. Go to the left, grab this ether. Here you want to stay south to avoid this mutant, and then up ahead we have this mutant here. You just want to stay left of this fire hydrant, and that way you can avoid that fight. I feel like the enemy encounters are kind of an interesting design choice for this game. Like, it's almost like there's these... I mean, yes, there are some enemies that you can walk into, but for the most part, most of the enemy encounters are actually more like invisible pressure plates. And you're just walking around in, like, this passive open world area, and then, like, you step on something and it causes the enemy encounter. It's kind of weird. But what's sort of neat about that, though, is if you know where to walk, you can then avoid most of the enemy encounters entirely, which is kind of fun because then you can sneak past and you can go heal. And so I like it because it gives you the option at least, and it's kind of almost more like the advanced way of playing through the game, is if you know where to walk, you can avoid certain fights. So if there's particular enemies you don't want to fight because, for example, they're vulnerable to magic and you're out of MP, then you can just ignore that particular one or whatever. Yeah, you know what I mean? So there's just like, you can fight only the enemies you want to. Especially for farming for particular materials. Sometimes that's kind of neat. And I just think it's an interesting choice. It feels like different compared to other games, I guess, and I think it's kind of an interesting choice. So anyways, I think what I'm going to do is, right now I'm of course avoiding as much combat as possible, but for the rest of the walkthrough, I think what I'll do is I'll show how to avoid the pressure plates, but then I will still step on them on purpose, and the reason is so I can kill everything once, because as I was explaining back in Minoria Cathedral, I think that gives you just the decent amount of XP that feels good for most of the game, and then it's like you're pretty good. So anyways, we just arrived at our second town, which is called Arris Dome, and as you talk with everybody, they all have very depressing things to say. Apparently they did not believe that anybody could actually make it through Lab 16, because everybody that tries typically dies, as far as they know anyways, because they never heard of anybody who successfully made it through there. So they're surprised to see us here entirely, and it turns out that these people are just like the people in the other dome. They have an Enertron here that you can use as well to restore your HP and MP, however, it still leaves you feeling hungry, and all the people here are apparently starving. I think the Enertron is a really interesting design choice, how it just has that one simple line of text, is you're still just as hungry as before, and it has everybody casting their eyes down and having that little sound is like such a simple little addition, but it adds to it's like the mechanics add to the story. And I think that's like a really great way of doing it. It's just as you're playing, you're experiencing, you're learning stuff about what's happening in the world. So this shop is the same as the one back in Trann Dome, so they have all the same stuff available. Now, what I'm doing right now is I'm just getting some armor. Again, I don't have very much money because I've been avoiding a lot of fights, so in general, my gold is actually pretty low. I probably don't have enough money to buy one of everything for everybody. I don't have enough money for that. I could sell some stuff, but then I'd probably barely have enough, but then I wouldn't be able to buy everything at the next shop. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to replace all my lowest tier slots, in particular all the hide stuff. All the hide stuff needs to be replaced right away, is my highest priority. So what I did here is that, for example, I noticed that Chrono actually has pretty high defense, so what I did is I put the bronze helm back on him so that I could give the iron helm to Marl to bring her physical defense up to similar values to everybody else. So now everybody has about 40. So yeah, unless you're like super over leveled, so you have an abundance of money for each tier, you're basically higher level than the tier of items you're even using, you know what I mean? So if that's the case, then you can buy whatever, but otherwise you probably don't have enough money to buy everything, so instead I just recommend you upgrade your lowest tier slots. So here what I'm doing is I'm just quickly selling everything that I can't use, so all my old stuff, I'm just selling all of it, which I actually you'll see that it actually boosted up my money quite a bit, so I could afford some more stuff if I wanted to at this point. However, I actually kind of regret that I sold everything because I wanted to swap out some items with Luca and Marl here in a little while, and because I don't have any other equipment for them to equip, they can't take anything off, so I can't steal their items off them. So yeah, my recommendation for you would be maybe to keep 1 or 2 like hide helms, and like maybe a couple like bronze armors or something like that, because for example, Chrono currently is wearing a bronze helm, and then Marl has an iron helm, but later I'm going to leave Marl behind, so it would be nice if I could equip a bronze helm onto Marl so I could put that iron helm on Chrono, and that would be a way I could save money by just moving items back and forth. So that's one way you can do something like that, but if I don't have any items to put in those slots, then I can't do that. So when you're ready to proceed, you just want to go down the sewer access looking thing that's to the south, and then Doan and the others will confront you about it and be like, oh my goodness, are you actually going to try like going to the food stores? That's suicidal. Apparently some of the villagers here have tried to go down here before, none of them have returned alive. So you know, good times all around. But they really need the food, so you can head down there and they will reluctantly allow you to pass, and we're going to go confront the security system. So you'll find a rat along the way, which is apparently a statue. You can read the note on it, which just warns you that there is bad stuff happening up ahead. So run straight north, you'll eventually encounter this boss, which is called Guardian. So the first thing to know is that this boss counterattacks if you attack the main body while the pods/bits are still alive. So what we want to do is we want to attack the pods first. So attack those guys, just use single target attacks. Don't use like Firewall, for example, is a bad idea because you will hit the boss and that will cause the counter. So just attack only the pods by themselves. Just use physical attacks with everybody except for Luca, who can use flamethrower/flame toss. So go ahead and use that on them. Just be careful again that if you're going to attack like the far one, for example, away from her, that the pod is positioned in such a way where it doesn't get in front of the boss. Because if you attack the boss with because flamethrower can attack enemies in a line, so if that pod is too far to the north, then she could end up hitting both the boss and the pod at the same time. That's bad. So just keep using all of your attacks on the pods. Now, one thing to know about this is when you're queuing up attacks on them, kind of wait to see what's going to happen with your other characters. Like, don't just queue up too many attacks in a row if you have 2 pods left, because if you kill the first pod and then your attacks are already queued up with your characters and your next character attacks the boss, you will then cause the counter, which is awful, and the counter just hurts really, really bad. Now, if you've been following along with me, then I've been actually avoiding fights. I did talk about how if you are not trying to get the secret, that you should get some XP with Marl in Lab 16 so that she learns Aura in time for this boss. So you can heal with her using that if you have learned Aura. If you haven't learned Aura, you're going to have to use potions, and then at that point, the best choice is to still have Luca be your designated healer, because she just does the lowest physical damage, especially if you did not get the blaster upgrade from the shop. So I didn't bother getting it because we're going to get a blaster upgrade for her soon, and I'm using her on potion duty anyway. So, and between the two of them, Marl just does more damage. We just got in fact, we just got the silver bow/low bow with Marl just a little bit ago. So she does like double the damage that Luca does with physical. So when you destroy the pods, just keep smacking the boss with physical attacks until it can revive the pods. Once it does revive them, then you want to go ahead and switch back to them again, because we need to kill them as soon as possible. And also, if you attack the boss while the pods are present, then it will counterattack. As always, try to use flamethrower on multiple pods at the same time if you can, if they position themselves well. Typically, the left one tends to travel a little bit further south, actually, to make this a little bit nicer for you. So it is very highly likely that you will be able to go ahead and use flamethrower in that way. I would encourage you, though, like, even though I could technically wait for the pod on the left to be a little bit further south so I can flamethrower both of the pods at the same time, I still think it's worthwhile to try and take out one of them as soon as possible. So I got rid of the left one. And the reason for this is because the 2 pods could potentially use amplifier, like they both use it at the same time. Bam, bam. And amplifier does somewhere between 40 and like 50 damage. It just can do up to that much. So if they both do it at the same time, like you look at Marl's health, she only has 98 health. If they both do like 45, 50 damage per hit because her magical defense is a little bit lower, then they could just, boom, instantly kill her and she's just dead. Just all at once, and it's just awful. So I would recommend you get rid of one of the pods as soon as possible, because it's potentially a lot of damage. So yeah, those are kind of the only details to know with the boss, is don't attack him while the pods are still present, focus the pods down, don't use flamethrower on the boss himself because he's immune, and then just do as much damage as you can during the countdowns. Now, one quick comment about this too is you'll notice that Chrono is really hurt. I really should ideally heal him. However, I'm trying to do as much damage as I can during the countdown because he doesn't have that much health. Like, he only has 1,200, and I did like 700 some damage in the last turn, I think. So he should die right now. He's very close to dead, so there you go. I finished it off in just 2 phases, which is great. So just in 2 countdowns, I was able to do enough damage to finish off the boss. And just as a comment too, like, because I'm so underleveled, you probably have more XP than me if you're not trying to get the secret along with me, because I'm avoiding fights. So if you have even more XP, then you probably have higher stats, and as a result, you do even more damage to this boss, so you should be able to finish him off in just 2 phases. And there we have it, Mara leveling up and learning her heal ability after the boss. This is how it has to be, though. Like, if I'm gonna get that secret, I can't, like, get these abilities ahead of time. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Like, we got a bunch of potions back at the trial anyways, and we're going to have to use them up before they're obsolete regardless. We're moving up to mid potions here shortly anyways, so it doesn't really matter. So in the next room, you'll find that all the food supplies have spoiled, which is really sad. But there is one body here who's apparently a corpse, and that's sad. But apparently, my guess is that this is the husband of the widow upstairs, who was saying that her husband went down here to try for one last-ditch effort to try and find the food, and then he had a daughter, too, who was looking forward to seeing him. So he apparently did not make it, which isn't really that surprising. It is surprising, though, that he made it past the Guardian in the first place. Apparently, he got past the Guardian, but then couldn't leave. Now, this guy has a seed in his hand, and he also has a note that you can inspect. If you inspect it one more time after you've already inspected him the first time, you could read the note to find that he says that there's a little clue about the rat outside. Go ahead and open the chest to get a mid-ether, and then run back outside. You'll immediately see that the rat is up ahead, and it apparently has moved. It is not a statue at all, so just run after it. If you're playing on any version other than the DS, you want to hold down the B button so you run the entire time. Just keep running after it, and what you want to do is actually the easiest way to do this is just keep mashing the A button, because the rat pauses every once in a while, and then that way, as soon as you get even remotely close to it, if you're mashing the A button, then you will successfully catch it. So that's how you do that. Now, if you fail, just go back through the north door and come back south again, and this will make the rat reappear at the top, and you can try again. So just keep doing it until you successfully do it, and what the rat says is that all you have to do is you have to press L, R, and A at the same time in front of the control console in order to open the door. So stand in front of the console, press L, R, and A at the same time. This will create a bridge so we can access the door up ahead. So this is our destination. You want to go ahead and grab the nearby mid-ether and then continue onwards. Now, as a quick comment, if you are playing on an emulator, apparently this is a pretty common question that gets asked online for this game, is how to get past that door. And that is because for emulators, apparently they have an issue where if you're pressing too many different buttons at the same time, it doesn't accept the input or something like that. So to get through that, all you have to do is just bind multiple buttons to the same one. I'd recommend probably L and R to the same button temporarily, because you can use the A button still for combat and stuff for this next little bit, because up ahead we have another console we want to use. So this little part, we have another enemy. You can just simply hold still, let it patrol past you. And again, remember that you can always do this. Any patrolling enemies, you can just hold still and they will just glide right through you or even swerve around you. Which is kind of a weird mechanic. I don't even know why they do it that way. Anyways, go ahead and use the L, R, and A combination on this one too. And now, if you're playing on an emulator, go ahead and change the bindings back. That will create a bridge to another one of those doors with a crest on it. We can't actually do anything with that at this exact time, but we will come back here later to get those goodies. However, it is kind of a pain to remember the password and like do that all later. So I just recommend you do it now, especially if you are rebinding keys on your program or whatever. So that would just be awkward to have to redo it again later and have to look that up and try and figure out what it is. So I just recommend you take care of it now. Anyways, continue on back, goes south towards like the middle of the room. And on the left side, there is an upper balcony area you can take to reach our next quest objective up here. I love this part. Like the song, I don't even know. It just like it's depressing music and it switches to victorious. It just makes me feel all like giddy. I get these like butterflies in my stomach kind of as soon as it switches, and like it just makes me want to laugh. And which is exactly what they're going for, I'm sure. But yeah, I just think it's really cool. One thing I think is kind of neat about this too is that even if you fight enemies for this whole section, the music does not change. It stays as the victorious main theme music for this whole thing. This game has a lot of little details like that. It's just subtle little things, and yet it does make a big difference. And I always just found that very impressive. Having dabbled in game development a little bit myself, just over the years, I always kind of like keep an eye on stuff like this because it's just like a little tool to put in the tool belt, you know? Alright, so with the jet bike key, we now can travel through Lab 32, so we're going to do that here in a little bit. Before you leave, though, do make sure that you heal at the Enertron and go ahead and save at the Sparkly. That's actually all we had to do here at Arris Dome. Now, before we leave, I am going to show some of the dialogue of the family of the man that we found downstairs in the food room. Ugh, gets you in the feels every time. But this game has a lot of good dialogue like that, kind of optional dialogue that you don't have to see, but it definitely adds to the story. And those are the kinds of things I really want to highlight in this walkthrough. So now moving on, next we can go to the abandoned sewers if you want. There is some optional stuff we can do there right now, and that leads to some items that are some upgrades for we can get. It's in our level range right now. However, I am trying to avoid as many levels as I can at this exact time. So I will come back here and do this in just a little bit, actually. So a couple videos from now, I will come back and do the sewers. But just so you know, it is in our level range right now, and there is some upgrades you can get there. So if you want to go ahead and tackle that, feel free. Otherwise, and I'll show that here a couple videos from now. For our next objective, you want to head to Lab 32, open the nearby chest to get a mid potion, and then place the bike key inside the hover bike nearby. This will cause some enemies to confront you. However, they are quickly stopped by a new character named Johnny. This is such a silly development. Like the dialogue here is quite funny and stuff, and it's such an interesting concept, like robot biker gang in the future. Like, what? I feel like this is a thing that probably wouldn't translate very well, or be a little bit harder to pull off with a bunch of 3D models. I think for a 2D game it makes a lot of sense to just have sprites for this. This is the kind of thing you can get away with, this kind of goofy humor, but I think this would be kind of a little bit over the kill for like a 2D game or 3D game to invest that much development time on something like that. But anyways, all you have to do is just stay ahead of Johnny here. All you have to do, honestly, is you can hang out in the back. It doesn't matter. Your points are completely irrelevant right now. All we have to do is make sure we cross the finish line first. And because you kind of weave back and forth, all you have to do is just kind of weave either north or south to get in front of him, and then press the B button to use one of your boosts. You have 3 different nitros you can use, so just use one of them to cross the finish line first, and that's all you have to do. Super easy. The points actually don't matter right now at all. Our only interest is crossing the finish line first. That's all that matters, is winning. We will come back here later to win prizes, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. But anyways, if you fail, all you have to do is try again and just keep doing that. But that's what I'd recommend, is just kind of swing around him at the last moment and then press B to cross the finish line first. That's all you have to do. Once you successfully do it, then Johnny will hang his head dejectedly, and he'll say you can challenge them again anytime. This allows you to pass back through Lab 32 to go back the other direction. However, you can also walk between them, and there's a bunch of chests in there that have items. One of them has the race recorder, otherwise known as the race log, which will allow us to earn points and then win prizes from Johnny as well. I will come back here later to do that. I'm not going to do it at this exact time, but that eventually leads to it getting a strength capsule. For now, continue on towards Proto Dome, where we have 2 mandatory fights with a new enemy that they were in Arris Dome actually, but I didn't end up fighting them. But they are here, and they're called exterminators. Otherwise, in the old version of the game, they're called buggers. Now, these guys they're actually, like, in the artwork and stuff like that, they're actually super short. So they're supposed to be, like, kind of like knee level or something like that, is as tall as they are. They're actually really teeny, actually. They're not very big. But anyways, this first fight, you kind of have to just use regular attacks, pretty much. They're not close enough to really use a fire whirl. But for the next battle right after this, we can totally use a fire whirl, and it's great. Let's go ahead and defeat him. You can use whatever you want. You should easily be able to do it, and right after that, we have an Enertron we can heal at anyway. So as I explained at the beginning of the walkthrough, there is some bonus features for the DS remake, as well as the PlayStation version of the game, and one of those bonus features is the fact that there are cinematics that they made for the PlayStation version, and then those carried over to the DS remake. So, one of those cinematics takes place as we continue on to the north, and we meet up with this new character. So, it takes place just after you see him for the first time, and then that cinematic plays. It's a little bit, the cinematics always feel kind of disjointed to me. They just suddenly pop there in the middle of nowhere, and then always feel, it's like almost like a replaying of the same events you just witnessed, kind of, and sometimes they even give spoilers of future events, so I sort of don't like them because of that. It just feels a little bit out of place. So anyways, that little flash on the screen was it happening right now, was the cinematic, so I just skipped over it for the walkthrough. The reason I'm skipping over it is because it flags my videos like crazy for copyright, so I'm not going to be putting them in the walkthrough because otherwise it demonetizes it instantly. So I just find it really sad. Like, I'm trying to include all the bonus stuff in this walkthrough, but there's some things that I don't know. I don't want to make all my effort for nothing, you know? But yeah, I hope you guys understand, but that's my reasoning as to why I don't have it in here. But that all being said, if you guys are interested in watching that optional cinematic, then go ahead and just do a search online for like Chrono Trigger, Robo cinematic, or Robo movie, or something like that, and you'll then witness it right now. This is the point in the game when it takes place. So if you're trying to watch them as they become available, now would be the time to do it. So in order to access the door to the north, which is where we detected that gate using the supercomputer back at Arris Dome, we need to restore power here to Proto Dome, and in order to do so, Robo says we need to activate a generator up at the factory to the north. So we're going to take a team of Chrono, Robo, and one of our girls to the factory, and meanwhile one of the girls needs to stay behind to open the door while we temporarily have power. So at this point, you get to choose if you want to leave behind Marl or Luca, and it's up to you. You can decide whichever one you want. Now, as far as the pros and cons of each choice, Marl is a little bit more focused on physical damage, and she also has healing spells. Meanwhile, Luca is all focused on magic damage. Now, some of the fights, enemies are vulnerable to magic, some of the fights, enemies are vulnerable to physical, and some of the fights, ideally healing is the thing you want. So, Honestly, though, as far as between the two of them, it's pretty 50-50 which fights are which, so it doesn't really matter that much. You can choose either one you want. Keep in mind, too, that Robo also has some healing abilities, so you don't necessarily have to rely on Marl for healing for most of the fights anyways, but that'll make sense once we get there later. As far as for the boss, I think overall Marl is the better choice, but either one of them is fine. We can also heal with potions, so don't worry about it too much. It's not a big deal. Now, if you do want to swap out for the other girl, then you can just speak with her, and you can swap out whatever you want, so don't worry about it too much. Here, real quick, what I decided to do is I was going to try and take my highest tier items. I'm trying to take the iron suit off of Marl and put the iron helm that she has on Chrono instead, so that I could have the highest tier armor for all my characters. However, I didn't have an extra helm or body armor that I could swap out with in order to unequip it. In order to unequip it, I had to equip something else. But because I sold everything back in the town, I couldn't do that, so that was sort of a mistake, apparently. So take whichever of the girls you like better. I think that I generally prefer Luca's dialogue, just because I think it's a little more enjoyable, but either one of them is fine. So that's actually the end of this video. Join me for the next video where we go to the factory to the north. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.